From Amy's mother passing away in the very first episode to the tragic death of Ty Borden in the 14th season, these are Heartland's most heartbreaking moments yet. Now, you probably weren't expecting heartbreak so early on, especially on a show that was meant to be more feel-good and less cry your eyes out. But the death of Amy Fleming's mother, Marion, shook us all a little bit. That said, it was one way to get the audience invested in Amy right away. The episode starts with this intense scene where Amy is helping her mom rescue a mistreated Spartan horse. They're caught in the middle of a raging storm, but don't give up and manage to save the horse. On their way back home, something terrible happens. Their car skids off the road and crashes. Amy gets injured badly and remains unconscious in the hospital for a few days. Eventually, she starts to regain consciousness in the hospital. Jack and Lou are there with her when she wakes up, confused and disoriented. Naturally, she asks about her mom and wants to see her to make sure that she's okay. That's when Jack delivers the heartbreaking news to Amy. He tells her that Marion didn't make it through the accident. It's an incredibly difficult moment for Amy, and to make things worse, she ends up blaming herself for what happened to her mother. Hey, survivor's guilt is real, and losing a parent just changes you. Because even though Ty's dad, Brad, was a horrible parent, his dad's death left him heartbroken to the core, and this was the same man who had abandoned, lied to, and even endangered him. Brad even reaches out to his son to help him just when Ty and Amy begin their relationship, and Ty leaves everything behind to be with him, only to find out that it was just a trap. His dad just wanted to get some money from Ty. It's so messed up because the poor guy gets beat up by the men his father owes money to. But they kinda start mending their relationship when Brad shows up with a truck full of starving horses. They start developing a somewhat friendly situation, but then Brad steals a bunch of money from Lou and runs away in the middle of the night. The next big news comes when Lily Borden, Ty's mother, visits and tells him that his father has passed away. He acts like it doesn't bother him and that he doesn't care, but he's devastated. Lily gives Ty Brad's ashes to spread in a peaceful place. That's when Ty gets the idea to go on a road trip to Eagle Lake. This place holds a special significance for him because it's where he, Lily, and Brad had their very first and last road trip together when Ty was just a kid. Jack decides to follow Ty to Eagle Lake to be there for him. When they finally arrive at the lake, Ty opens up to Jack and confesses that he really misses his father. It's a vulnerable moment for him, but having Jack by his side provides some comfort. The show's had its share of emotional moments, and some of them break your heart in a good way. Like that time when Ty and Amy were trapped in a cabin in the finale of Season 2. That episode was a real turning point in their relationship. Ty, being the caring and sensitive guy he is, starts worrying about the wild horses and their survival during the harsh winter. So together with Amy, they decide to sneak out to the fishing cabin to provide some much-needed food for the horses, even though Jack disapproves of their plan. Once Amy and Ty spread the hay for the horses, things quickly take a dramatic turn. Ty suddenly collapses with a high fever, and to make matters worse, a snowstorm hits, trapping them in the cabin. It's a nail-biting episode as Amy takes care of Ty throughout the night, doing her best to help him and calling for help. Eventually, she manages to reach their family through a shortwave radio, and Peter takes charge of mobilizing assistance and reopening the highway. By morning, the snowstorm subsides, and Ty's fever miraculously disappears. Still stuck in the cabin, Amy and Ty share a beautiful moment as they spot the majestic Appaloosa ghost. In that moment, they finally confess their love for each other. This episode was a long time coming, bringing the much-anticipated love confession between our favorite couple. Ty and Amy have definitely given us a few emotional moments on the show, especially that really difficult time in Mongolia. In Season 11, Ty does it again and heads off to Mongolia, this time to help a horse named Attila. But surprise, surprise, Amy and Tim also end up following him as originally planned. But here's the twist. When they arrive in Mongolia, Ty is nowhere to be found. They can't even reach him or the vets without going to the border camp where he was. Now they're faced with a tough decision. Should they stay in the safe camp or take a risk and venture out to find Ty? After some consideration, they decide to join forces with Altan, their Mongolian guide, and make their way to the vet camp. When they finally get there, the whole place is destroyed and still no sign of Ty. But they do manage to gather some information. Turns out Ty went to help the next village, which was in even worse shape. Things are not looking good at this point. Meanwhile, Ty and his Mongolian guide Beta get caught by poachers. But thankfully, they leave them in the desert, only to be found just in time. Ty and Amy have an emotional reunion that had all of us sighing with relief. The same episode had another heart-wrenching moment, as Tim finally seemed to be coming to terms with his cancer. So while they were searching for Ty, they had a fascinating encounter with Altan, who happens to be a shaman. Altan told Tim something very intriguing, that he's experiencing an imbalance, surrounded by darkness that's slowly wearing him down. At first, Tim didn't buy into Altan's words, thinking it was all nonsense. But as the events unfolded, he started to open up to the idea of finding balance once again. By the end of the episode, it seemed like Tim was starting to embrace the notion of letting go of his shadows. And right before they left, Tim had an important question for Altan: how to find balance. Altan's response was profound. He advised Tim to be brave enough to welcome the light. But his worsening health condition was heartbreaking not just for him, but others too. He actually breaks up with Casey to protect her. In Season 11, Episode 8, it turns out that Tim's mood swings, vertigo, numb hands, sensitivity to light, and headaches weren't caused by substance abuse after all. At first, Tim suspected it might be post-concussion syndrome from his rodeo days and all the concussions he had suffered. But as it turns out, it was something even more serious. Dr. Varani delivered the news that a recent MRI showed that the shadow on Tim's brain was a tumor. In the next episode, we saw him driving home after another MRI, and unfortunately, the shadow was still there. If things didn't change within a few weeks, he would need surgery. This meant Tim had some difficult decisions to make. But the issue was that only Jack knew about Tim's situation. Everyone else just thought he was in a bad mood. In a heartbreaking move, he broke up with Casey so he could protect her from another heartbreak and spare her the pain of losing someone to illness so soon after her brother's death. What made it worse was that Casey had no idea why he actually did it. But by far, the most emotionally charged point in the whole show was the death of Ty Borden. He was one of the main characters on the show, and he had just been through so much. Honestly, many of us did not see it coming. But there was an indicator earlier that the actor who plays Borden, Graham Wardle, had already been thinking about leaving the show. It was when Ty decided to go to Mongolia. Wardle was taking a break from Heartland to figure out what he wanted to do. So in the Season 13 finale, something really heartbreaking happens. Amy and Ty find themselves in a dangerous situation with a poacher, and they end up getting shot. It's such a tense moment, but Ty, being the hero that he is, tries to shield Amy and takes the bullet himself. They rush Amy to the hospital to treat her gunshot wound, but that's when they realize Ty has been shot too. It's just devastating because Ty's condition worsens because of a blood clot that forms as a result of the gunshot. And then, in the first episode of Season 14, Amy is working with a wild colt with Spartan by her side when suddenly, Ty collapses. She and Jack rush to him, desperately trying to help. Sadly, it's too late. Ty passes away right there. So from the death of one of the lead characters, Borden, to the death of Amy's mother in the first episode, these were Heartland's most heartbreaking moments.